A very good evening and good afternoon, good morning to all of you. I think people are joining across the globe, and it's a special webinar, like I pointed out on my LinkedIn profile. Not to be missed webinar, because we have one of our special guests today. We have John Munro from PMI, and he is, what I understood from my connects in PMI, is good guy for the disciplined agile. I was looking at John's profile, and he has a unique mix of sales and agile, and he is a perfect guy for actually the customer facing guy for disciplined agile, if I may to say that. I would love to know personally what's happening in the marketplace with regards to disciplined agile. Although we are creating a buzz on disciplined agile, it has some great content. It stands out from the rest in the agility space. But what exactly, guys, happening in the marketplace? And John would be the best person from PMI to give a glimpse or certain insights for us what's happening with regards for disciplined agile. So without wasting any single moment, okay, I welcome John for this webinar, which we are eagerly waiting for. So John, all over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. I want to just say today's session is going to be a little bit different than I normally do. And I'll describe more of my background in a minute here. So I'm customer facing. So I normally my presentations are, they're really focused on the product, those sorts of things. Today it's going to be different. Today I really want to focus on the customers that I'm talking to and kind of what I'm hearing in the field. Where are the opportunities? If I'm a consultant or if I'm working for somebody and I want to make my career better and increase my ability to advance, what are the things that, like, where are the opportunities? Where are the gaps that need to be filled? And so this is really about that. I will talk about discipline and agile at the end, because I'm going to show you how it connects to that, but that's not really my intent. I was asked to do this webinar, and I thought, I'm gonna change it up a little bit and really try to give everybody a good sense of where things fit and where they can take advantage of them. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to also leave open the chat, so I can, if you're okay with this, I'll be able to read the chat and answer questions as we go. And I find that provides some great dialogue as we're going through the session. So let me just share a screen. Now, you're going to see a screen that says Disciplined Agile. And I just got to open up my chat window again here. So just give me one quick second while I sort of get things arranged. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Disciplined Agile. Let's cover just a placeholder. But what I want to talk about today is really, what did I learn, or what did we learn in 2021? I have been doing this type of a presentation now for years, just to sort of reflect on what's going on. And so today I'm going to talk about, organizational. So what are organizations looking at as far as goals go? I'll show you how I got to that data. What are some trends that I'm seeing? I say from the trenches. There was a book came out, was called Scrum from the Trenches. I highly recommend it. It's a great book. So I like kind of amusing. So for those people who know that book, they might recognize that term. What are the top 5 challenges that organizations are dealing with? And what are people doing about all this? Like, how are they managing these things and what they're doing? Just as a point of reference for everybody, PMI is really very different than the other players inside the Agile community. And I mean other people who supply solutions in the Agile community, right? So I'm talking about the IC Agiles, the Safes, the Scrum, et cetera. Scrum Alliance rather. PMI is a not-for-profit, right? So, and it was started 51 years ago. Its only purpose, and the reason that we're around is to help our members become more successful at project management. That's it. There's no other goal. There's no other agenda. We're not trying to, build, products to compete with the rest of the market. We're not trying to do any of those things. What we are a for-purpose organization, and you really see it here. To me, we don't talk enough about this. We have 14,000 volunteers worldwide. In fact, we just had a conference in Orlando last week. It lasted 10 days with 3 different membership groups: executive membership groups, chapter memberships groups, and others. They just got together to collaborate on how to make, like our main mission, right? We don't say it like this. The way I say it is we just want to make projects better, right? Get that success and help people build their skills to do that. But the fact that if you think of it, because we're all from, this call is all about the Agile community, right? The Agile community doesn't have anything like this. Even though there's more people in Agile than there are likely in the project management roles, right? With product owners and scrum masters and coaches and all the rest of it. There's probably more people worldwide, but yet we still don't have, in our Agile world, we don't have a group of people who are like this, right? So all of our groups are centered around offerings, right? So like Scrum has a group, right? The Scrum Alliance kind of has a group, and there's a whole bunch of smaller groups around. But I honestly believe that at some point PMI will really jump into this space and really build out the Agile community, but because we got a great start at 14,000. So that's a real unique thing, right? As far as PMI and really the Discipline Agile, so Discipline Agile brand, we're really trying to help. We really help in the way of making Agile practitioners, leaders to expand their careers into being, value stream consultants. We're all about that, right? How do we move people up that curve? And you'll see this when we start talking about these challenges and stuff. They're really around leadership type issues. So who am I? So I'm obviously, we give my name, John Monero, but what I do is I talk to customers globally about DA and Agile. So I'm the global business lead for PMI in the Agile brand. And so I interact with executives, practitioners, product people, etc., and doing webinars like this, but really about listening to customers and finding out where the challenges are, and how PMI and how our mission statement of making projects better, how we can help them to solve those problems. So I see a lot of people in a year. I mean, I would talk to probably at least 100. I haven't actually counted them. I probably should, but probably 100 people a year, 100 people or 100 organizations a year about Agile and just projects in general, but primarily about Agile. And they're not all IT. They're not all IT at all, actually. In fact, we're working right now with an organization who does packaged goods. And we're working with them on how do you make an R&D facility Agile, right? Who does food-based products. Working with another organization that does construction. How do we use Agile and Lean? And I should say, when I say Agile, I'm assuming Lean is dragged in there, right? I'm assuming that they're all the same thing. So how do we help organizations implement Lean to make things flow better, right? And that's construction. So we're construction, we've got R&D, we've got all kinds of different things going on. I kind of got a front row seat to all those things. So that's what I do. The questions, and I do a lot of presentations, right? So the one thing I do, and not everybody does this, but I do this because I'm always interested to know. I ask people to say, what are, how would you prioritize these 5? I call them business dimensions. I don't call the business dimensions here, but I say, how would you rate these top 5? How would you prioritize them? Would you say if you could only pick to focus on one to improve, what would it be? Faster time to value, improved quality, lower costs, faster time to market, or improved productivity? What would be the number one thing to do? And I'd be interested just for people to say, well, let me just ask the participants. If you had to only pick one of those, which one would you think is and this is being asked to executives and leaders. So what would you think they would say is their number one? And I'll tell you what the actual answer is here in a second, but what do you think it would be? Just put it in the chat. I got chat right in front of me so I can see it, no problem. So, and just call it, type it in or just say it, or you can do it that way as well. I don't see anybody putting anything in the chat. Okay, well, let's move on. The number one thing that people ask about is, how do we improve our time to market? Without a doubt, 100%, it's only time to market. The other 4, they're always interested in all 5, of course, but it's really, how do we get faster time to market? So, and there's one other one, but it's because it's not on the list here. The other one is, how do we improve prioritization? What do we have to do to be able to get work done? And I'll tell you where it's coming from. And you'll hear a lot in the industry right now about value streams. But the issue really is we have too much work to do, and we're not going to get it all done. And so what's the most important work to do? I had a CIO say to me from a bank in the US, say, he has a big backlog of work, and one of his directors said, well, why don't we just hire more people? And the director said, well, I could double the size of my IT department and we still wouldn't get, the work done. So that's just not an option. We need to find a way to do better job of prioritization. So the number one is faster time to market. The solution, the other thing they say is there's too much work, and need to find a way to do better prioritization. And I think that plays into a lot of areas that we deal with in just, not isn't discipline agile, but just as leaders, right? Because there's so much going on, how do we deal with that? But it's absolutely no question. The number one thing is increasing time to market. Sorry. The other thing is, what are some of the trends, right? The one is that I'm seeing there is just agile going on everywhere, right? Like it's happening, like I said, in construction and building hardware. So I'm working with an organization that does machine learning. They do AI. It's a quantum physics type. They're using quantum physicists to build AI systems that have a very large AI component. So in their world, it's partly about machine, like hardware, and partly about software and machine learning. So for them, it's just all over the place, right? We're dealing with another organization that builds condos in Toronto, and they're trying to find a way to implement Agile for construction. I'm dealing with an organization who has a marketing department, and they want to put Agile in, to be able to work in a more team-oriented Agile way. I'm working with a large contractor who builds roads, and they're trying to find ways to put Agile there. Now in that case, and remember, Agile and Lean kind of go together. So really a Lean kind of way of working for them. So I'm seeing it everywhere. And I think, the gap there is really about the Agile principles because in our world, a lot of what we're talking about is Agile practices. And Scrum is about that, right? Scrum is learn these 5 practices and go forward with that, and now you're doing Agile. But really, and that probably works well right now in IT. And I should mention my background is IT, so that's what I've sold into. That's what I've dealt with. That's my world for a large degree. But that only takes you so far, right? Because you really need to shift how you approach Agile from the concept of just simple practices like Scrum's 5 practices, basically, to work it in an Agile principle-based approach. I don't have a principle slide here, but you probably all know them, right? Like for example, the one is, working software over documentation. Well, so that's obviously written from the Scrum principle guide, but how we would say that in business would be delivering value over documentation. So we prefer that. So collaboration over following a plan. Well, these are all principles that what I'm seeing is have a real need inside of businesses beyond IT. And people are trying to adopt it, but the way they're doing it is they're adopting it very much from a Scrum practice perspective. So I guess the thing is, from an opportunity perspective, I would suggest that there's a great opportunity for someone to spend some time on that, right? Teaching people, if I was in the consulting business right now, and I have no intention of doing this, but if I was in the consulting business right now, what I would do is I would be working on teaching people those basic principles of Agile. So the 4 basic principles, and there's 14 values, which I'm sure everybody knows about. So and pick and choose the values that sort of make the most amount of sense. But I would focus on those principles, and I would be teaching people the principles, and then from there I'd be building out my own coaching practice based on that. So I wouldn't do that if I was going into IT probably, but I would do that if I was going outside of IT. And the only reason I say not in IT is because the IT Agile space is pretty crowded, right? There's a lot going on there, a lot of people involved with that space already. But the opportunity, I think, is to take those Agile principles, make them into sort of who you are, basically, and then take them out. I'm going to show you how DA would fit into all this, by the way, because it absolutely does. But that would be the big thing. So you could take that to construction industries, you could take it to road, all those things that all the people I've mentioned, you could take it to them. So, so I'm seeing that trend. The other big trend I'm seeing is lean. Now, it's interesting because look at my brand, right? It's called Disciplined Agile. But really, for some industries, Agile is not the right way, right? It's not really a term that people gravitate to. So, one thing we've learned this year is that in the construction space in particular, the Agile ideas, the Agile words don't work in construction. It really is lean, particularly for things that are very process related and kind of repeatable, like, for example, building a road or building a bridge or those sorts of things. A lot, just that the language of lean and the practices to go better there than other spaces. Also, for anyone who's doing anything that is system related. So we're dealing with an organization who builds software for the real estate market. So what they do is they're like an incubator, if you like, and they build, so they're just focused on real estate, and they're just the venture cap firm, and they're trying to find applications inside of the real estate business they're trying to find problems inside the real estate area that they can build applications for. And the 14-person incubator that's trying to go well. For the building of the applications, for sure, absolutely, Agile works because you're trying to learn and adapt, and you're trying to find the right solution. But on the actual process of how do you intake things and how do you get through to ideation and how do you move, those are really more lean focused process issues. So what I would suggest is lean's becoming more and more relevant, and we're seeing it in really across the business now. Discipline Agile, we have lean practices in here. We brand it as Agile, and I'll show you why that is. But I think there's a great opportunity there. The other one, so the next one's kind of a career thing. There is a movement globally about moving people from the Scrum Master role to Agile coaches. And it's, not to throw anybody under the bus, but the Scrum Alliance, back in the day, produced a lot of Scrum Masters, right? The CSMs, a lot of them. PSM one's different, right? For sure. But the Scrum Alliance in particular enabled a lot of people with Scrum, at least at a cursory level. But I think it was oversold. So they became, people started thinking the CSMs were actual really Scrum Masters who are professionals, they're masters at it. And it's caused a lot of disappointment from employers in particular. So not necessarily maybe from the practitioners as well, but for sure for the employers. So what's happened is they're kind of going to that, XP. I'm talking about terms now. So the XP terms of using an Agile coach, even the Spotify model uses the Agile coach. We're seeing large consulting firms like McKinsey, et cetera, kind of switching from the Scrum Master term to the Agile coach, and going that way. And I'll tell you what's driving. There's two things driving it, right? There's the lack of skill in the Scrum Master community. So we're certainly seeing it from that perspective. But the other one is this. There's a really big movement towards being more agnostic, right? We're seeing more and more organizations saying, we like Scrum as a base, like as a base platform for sure. It's great place to start. But we can't do Scrum exactly the way it says because, and then they say something, right? Because our funding is not designed that way, because our people aren't skilled, because our executives don't understand it, because whatever. So, and it's that whole Scrum but thing, right? So, but the feeling is that they still like Agile because looking for faster time to market, right? That's the number one thing, faster time to market. So it's still like that. So now the question is, how do you adapt Scrum, to fit into an Agile thing? Well, the person who does that adaptation is an Agile coach. And so we're just seeing a lot more of that. And you're seeing it in lots of ways, right? We're seeing it even with IC Agile. IC Agile has a large practice that way. So do we. And, the SAFE doesn't really. They have what are called SBCs. So they're not really in the same kind of world that way. But we're all kind of, we're all recognizing there's a shift happening here. In fact, I was talking last night to an organization who does the CSM training, and they're in Canada, done it for years. Back since 2002, I think, maybe three, like a long time. And, their revenues are dropping. A lot of the people are leaving for other opportunities, and because the training, now may just be them specifically, but I'm just saying they've probably been cut in terms of size by about half. So, if I was the reason I mentioned is if I'm on this call and I'm thinking, how do I protect my career? I would be thinking about that next thing, right? and I'm just, what I'm saying is I'm hearing it's the agile coaches. So, focus your time there, and really about learning how to be agnostic. And I'm going to show you how DA helps with that, because I think we have, of all the stories here, that's the one that we can probably help with the most. And the other thing I'm seeing, another trend is safe. Like safe, is huge in IT. It's every large organization is doing it that I know of. I shouldn't say everyone, but honestly, it's 80%. There's a big push towards it. There's no question about it. But where and you know what? It's safe in large enterprise is the same as Scrum is in a medium-sized organization. Okay, so same idea. It's a good stable platform. It's a good place to start. It's all those sorts of things, and I think that's why people have gone to it. But where things, the other thing I'm seeing that same point is safe outside of IT struggles, right? So if we're talking about those other areas I'm talking about, like marketing and sales and those sorts of things, safe does struggle. But the safe, the way that I hear that, and I'm not a safe expert, I'm not. I mean, I'm safe certified and stuff, but that doesn't make me an expert. It just means I've passed the test. But to me, the message I'm hearing for safe is becoming better and better, right? Because it's all about, agile principles, agile. So it's all good stuff. But it gets hung up in the practices to get there, right? To actually implement. And that's the part that people are struggling with. And, not so much IT safe, like I said, that's very popular, but they are struggling with that outside of IT. So using a safe model for something like sales, for example, or marketing, or building a road, no, it just doesn't translate, right? It doesn't fit. And so what we're seeing then is them, keeping safe inside IT, but then using other agile ways of working outside of IT. So we're seeing a lot of that, and we're also seeing a lot of if they have, let's say, they have a small area in the company that's kind of more startup-ish, or they need to just do kind of like a, like a skunkworks type project or something, then it's not safe. It's usually some type of an agile based, maybe something closer to Scrum, but it's certainly not safe. As you know, right? Safe's great for projects that are 50 to 250 people. And they're run under the layers that Safe has with regards to portfolio management, et cetera, right? So it runs well in that environment, but it doesn't do well on the smaller stuff. It's still a great framework. Like I said, 90% of people use it. It's a great way to convert, great place. It's like Scrum for big organizations. It's good that way. So those are the big trends that I'm seeing. And I think there's opportunity in there for people. Just to focus, like I said, just to summarize the opportunity is focus on the agile principles and bring that into organizations that are, those 4 agile principles, have a consulting practice or internally even, work on those ones with your leaders, and, teach them how to make decisions based on those principles, move away from this, develop your career into an agile coach for sure. Intertwine with the agnostic piece, and find a way to do agile outside of, don't use safe outside of IT. Find ways of doing it. By the way, I haven't seen any questions, so I'm just going to keep going. But if you have any questions at all, a comment, or you agree or don't agree, by all means, add that. So the big challenges that I see are these the top 4 that I see. The one is there's just simply not enough people. There's not enough people to do the work, and this comes into the other problem we have, which is this whole issue of prioritization, right? So there's not enough people to do the work, and that's why prioritization becomes so important. Scaling agile skills is difficult. Like if you're an agile coach right now, you're super busy. There's no question. In fact, everybody in IT is busy. But I mean, if you're an agile coach, yeah, you're really busy, but the organization, they're seeing that a different way, right? They're seeing it, how difficult it is to hire an agile coach, and how difficult it is to find a good agile coach. And they really struggle with that. I mean, it's not uncommon at all for people to, to sort of take two roads to it, right? You either hire about six, you got, let's say at one position, you hire 6 agile coaches, and you're going to get rid of 4 of them and maybe keep 2 of them, then, or you really spend some time doing due diligence to bring them on. So, I mean, there is coaching, there is training for agile coaches, and anybody who knows some of the IC Agile will know about it. But the problem is that it's a lot of mindset, and I think the mindset stuff's important. I talked about it earlier about the principles for sure. Where the gap, however, is understanding what are the practices to actually make it work. And our whole industry, the whole agile industry, has really stayed away from trying to be prescriptive on those sorts of things, and it's hurt, right? Because now the level of consistency from person to person is difficult, and that's what employers are seeing, is it's hard to find a consistently good person, hard to find people that are hard to even determine who's a good person, right? And the other big challenge is just being comfortable with uncertainty, and you'll see this if you take my advice on the principle-based approach to consulting and to helping your organizations to manage their business. You'll see that having being comfortable, for customers to be comfortable with uncertainty is extremely difficult, because we all want to have the right answer all the time, right? And it's just simply not possible. So we sort of struggle with that. And the other thing is we need to simplify. The other major challenge is we need to find a way to simplify Agile and make it really available to everybody. Like today, if you want to know a lot of Agile practices in particular, you got to know a lot, man. You got to have read a lot of books. You have to really have a good sense of some real experience. Probably have a peer group that you're working with to bounce ideas off, etc. So you got to do a lot of different things to make it work. So we got to find a way, or they are looking for ways to simplify things and make them better. That's really what they're trying to do. So the next, I thought we would have got a few more questions. So we're running a little fast, but the next part is really about, how do we help? I'm just wondering now, I'll pop a slide up here. How many people do we have on the call today? Have a sense of that?
Around 45.
45. Okay, great. Thanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where PMI fits on this. So remember what I'm saying, right? It's moved agile coaching. How do we take agile outside of IT? How do we do these things? So, it'd be good if people would just put something in the chat, say, what I'm interested in is how many people have an interest in being an agile coach. If you do, just put Y, just hit Y and return. And I'll go ahead and, here we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, great. So I believe that the fastest way to be an agile coach is to use DA. And I will tell you a little secret. It took me a while to figure this out. I was in a consulting company before coming to PMI. I had agile coaches working for me. We were trying to find a way of scaling agile coaches. I was, all those sorts of things, right? So and we were doing some DA. So I had familiarity with DA, and that's why I'm here. So, but I'm going to show you something that'll make it so much easier for you to become an Agile coach. You know, you're going to absolutely wonder why someone hasn't thought of this before. Let me just switch screens here. So I should, you know what I should do? Let me just, I want to just go back to the screen for a second. I want to just show you something. I want to just show you one slide. You see the one that says how we can help, right? Okay, so let me just show you. Okay. So this is, so DA, Discipline Agile, is different. It's different because, you know, whereas Scrum is organized around practices, right? It will say something like, do stand-ups, use user stories, have a retrospective at the end of the sprint, whatever. It's practice-based, right? DA is the other way on. It is outcome-based, or what I call goal-based, right? So it's so all these things, see, and it's broken down into 4 major sections: inception, construction, transition, and ongoing. So inception is all the things you need to start a project. Construction is all the things obviously you build. That's mostly Scrum, right? Transition is how we get things to our revenue producing customers, and ongoing, which is really all about the whole issue of how do we do constant improvement. Okay, so the way, and by the way, SAFe is the same way. SAFe is all practice based. So this is outcome based. So the way you read this is, the easiest way is to say, what are my considerations when I need, done top left-hand corner, right? What are my considerations when I need to form a team? What are my considerations when I need to align to enterprise direction? So put that phrase, what are my considerations, in front of those goals. That's how you read it. And so what we have done is we have said, let's focus on the outcome, form a team, explore a scope, plan a release, etc. Focus on that. And then what we'll do is we will show you all the different practices and decision points and all the practices that are available to get to that outcome. Okay. So here's the question. And this is what this, I got this about probably right after I started. If I was to say, so imagine you're an Agile coach, or you've worked with an Agile coach, right? And you're sitting with them and they say, you know, first thing is, what are my considerations to form a team? Guys, that is a coaching question, right? Because they're there to help you form teams or help you to align to enterprise. This is everything on here is about how do you do things from a coaching perspective. So I want you to understand that part. That's the one really important part. The second thing is, so if we go back to, I want to show this works before I go to the demo. So if I double click explore scope, it would show a diagram like this, which is all the options that are available. I'm going to show you this online here in a second, but because we do it this way, it means we can do this. And this is the second most important part. We can pick practices from anywhere. It doesn't matter, right? We can pick them from SAFe, we can pick them from Scrum, we can use XP, we can grab something lean. It doesn't matter. All we care about is how do we give guidance on how to get to an outcome, okay? Which is exactly what a coach does, right? So let me show you how, so that's the magic sauce, I think. And let me show you how we do it. So let's say, just get a little more comfortable here. Let's say that you're working with a customer, or you're back at your organization. I always say customer. I know a lot of people want to be consultants, etc. So, and they say, and you're an Agile coach, and they say, okay, or an Agile team lead or something, and they say, we want you to form a team. So then the way you read this is, what are my considerations to form a team? And so, and this is an online tool. It's called, in fact, I'm gonna put this in the chat right now. So everybody can, if you want to, and Don't look at it while I'm doing this. So pay attention to me. So, because I can show you how it works here pretty quickly, and you can use it in a second. So, what are my considerations to form a team? Well, here's the things that you need to think about when you're building a team. And all of these boxes here are decision points. So, source of team members. Where are my team members going to come from? And it gives you a list of options. And when you click them, new, it gives you a description of what that means. So a team's been assembled for this initiative, may have not worked together before. So that's what that is. It gives you the trade-offs. The team will take some time to form, norm, and storm, resulting in working through trust issues, awkward conversations, etc. It could be inconsistent, but hopefully rising velocity in the initial stages. So it gives you the what it means to have a new team. And if we pick an existing product team, then it gives you a description of what it is. A team has worked together for some time, but on another product, even within the same domain. So you see that, for example, you see that within insurance, right? Like maybe there's someone's worked on a billing system and now they're going to work on a claim system or something, right? The team is likely to be better than a new team since they have a history of working together. Not having worked in the domain, or possibly not working in the domain, could introduce some risk of miscommunication, and the team may need to evolve demands of new type of work. So that gives you what that means. And if you go to like existing product team, you'll notice this, by the way, you'll notice the existing product team is in bold. That's because that's a recommended practice. So we suggest going to that point and being there. So if you're a coach, right, you would be trying to bring customers to build their agile environment like this with that practice. So what does that practice mean? And you can sit down with your customer or your stakeholders and say, a product team they work and performing with an existing team that has worked on previous understandings of this domain. The team understands the product domain to navigate the organization. The team has established a velocity. The team is likely to be gelled. Long-standing teams may sense the team, they may feel here's the downside. Long-standing teams may make some team members feel trapped in their current role, necessitating opportunities to transfer between teams and people. So it gives the downside of it, right? So, but my point is, as a coach, that's what you need to know, right? You need to know these things. Now, okay, I'm picking a pretty, I call forming a team a bread and butter sort of thing, right? So sure, but there are things that people need, that coaches need to know and be able to advise on. What's the team strategy? What's the size of the team? You get this all the time, right? How big they should be. And it gives you the trade-offs of why large teams are not as good as small teams, which is a question you get asked all the time because you got to sell it. Coach has to sell it internally. So it gives you that. PMI is a trusted body within the project management community. And so people, the reason why people are buying it, honestly, is because we are a trusted voice and they know that we've vetted these things and they're accurate. What should the structure be? The team skills, generalizing specialists you see as a recommended practice. So these are all things that a coach would use when trying to advise on how to build a team. That's kind of how in its first principle, that's how it's used. But here's the other way. Let's say you're a coach, and let's say you're a coach with an organization and you want to scale Agile across an organization, right? You want to really, really get it going because we're seeing Agile. I told you earlier, we're seeing Agile everywhere. How do I get it across, in multiple people's heads simultaneously with the same messaging? Well, this helps. Doesn't do everything for you, but it does help in that regard because it gives. I think one of the big values is it gives these common descriptions of what things mean so that people can all be on the same page. And as an Agile coach, that's also your job, is to make sure that everybody has the same understanding of what these things mean. Now, I picked a really easy one, right? Form a team. But there are some ones in here that really get, and I should mention, a lot of people say, wow, this is pretty overwhelming, and it is. And as an Agile coach, you can actually customize this for a team we have something called the DA profiler. So it lets you, for example, in this example, you could say, well, you know what, for our organization, I don't want to show my team members internal source, feature. I want to delete these options so they only see one option so they can make this. So as a team member, they can make decisions easier. Because what you might want to do as an agile coach, what you're going to be asked for anyway, is how do I get this information into the team members, right? So it lets you do that with some customization of the tool. I mean, if you want to give it to them full on, absolutely, you could do that as well. But that's how it's done. So I picked a pretty easy one, right? How do we form a team? Okay, great. But there's other ones here that get really, really into it, right? Like, for example, well, I'll show you some of these ones. So secure funding. So the way you read it is, what are my considerations for securing funding? And it gives you some options, some recommended practices. Funding one comes up all the time. And as an agile coach, where would you guide people? All these arrows show how you guide customers, how do you guide stakeholders on making decisions. Moving up towards the top of the arrow shows higher levels of agility or better outcomes to doing these things. But then you get some other ones, right? How do I plan a release? Now some of these are for IT. And remember, I said you can customize this. You could delete all the IT stuff and just left with you can make DA for market if you wanted to, if you cut that stuff out. It'd be much smaller, but you could do it. But here's how, it starts giving the, options on how to do this, right? So if I want to plan a release, I need to, know where my plan's coming from, the scope of my plan strategy, what level of detail, a calendar, etc. Okay. So this, if you look at it, what's happened here is Scott and Mark have really created all the decisions you need to have to build an agile team and environment. So I call it the software delivery ecosystem. Okay. So, because there's another way you can use the tool. You can use it to build teams. You can use it to build enterprise agility, but you can use it another way. And we have customers doing this now, which is, how do I fix a broken project? Well, the way you do it is you go through each, and there's 140 of these decision points. Go through all the decision points and rank where your organization is and what you've done. So it's like being used as an assessment tool, right? So they'd be able to help, and that's how we have large organizations who are using this tool as an assessment. So as a coach, right? It's a great tool to use to come into an organization to do an assessment. And now it's backed up by PMI. It has our authority and trust, etc. So it really gives some weight. The other one that people always remember, I said at the very beginning, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, is people say we want to have faster time to market. Well, remember, we're outcome driven. Whatever outcomes is here, accelerate value delivery. In other words, how do we get to market faster? So if you're in your organization and someone says, the executives and stakeholders want with me, if you can ask them, but literally I've asked hundreds of these people, and it's always faster time to market. You can say DA gives us a roadmap on what we need to do to get to faster time to market. And so as a coach, remember, we're all about, PMI is all about leadership skills, right? So as a leader, you can say, here are our options for how do we improve our time to market? How do we get to our customers better? How do we iterate quicker? How do we ultimately have higher satisfaction with our customers and ultimately have better financial outcomes? So that's pretty powerful stuff. And the thing is, it's not available. Everybody else in the world has gone towards practices, do these things. We've come at it and say, here are the outcomes here are the outcomes that we know people have been looking for, or they're talking to us anyway. And here's a roadmap and path to get there. So the course for here, I'm gonna have Arish put up the course that makes this all happen. This tool, by the way, is no charge. I put the link for it in the chat. The course is something called the Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master, or a good starting point is also the Discipline Agile Scrum Master, either one of them. So I'm gonna stop there because I've been talking for like 40 minutes here. And let's open up to questions or comments or thoughts. Or this is good.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, John. I think it was a very insightful thing. No, I was just listening patiently to all the things. It was for me, who is like deep down into disciplined agile. I meet some customers, I meet some students. I found this pretty insightful. What the customers say, what are the trends that are happening. I found it pretty insightful. Um, so, guys, anyone who has a question can put a question in the chat window, or you can put it in the question and answer panel as well. And I will be happy to take this question to John, and I think he will be happy to answer that question. So please go ahead. And in the meanwhile, John, I have a question for you. Okay, like you said, there are many businesses who can actually take to disciplined agile. Like you said, lean in business, like construction, manufacturing, other than IT, who do that. Now, disciplined agile suggests that there should be a technical, architect or architecture owner role in the disciplined agile team. And many who do this suggest that it is very IT kind of focus. Also, we say that, okay, there is this, every business is a software business, etc. So how do you justify, a little kind of more, there is more of IT in disciplined agile? How do you project this to a business which is other than IT? Is my question to you.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's because the reality is that DA is IT, right? I mean, 90% of what's, I wouldn't say 90, but a lot of what's in there is IT. But some of the stuff I just showed on forming the team, etc., that doesn't matter, right? That could be anywhere. But what and the way I would do it, if I was going to take, let's just forget about DA for a second. If I was going to work with a group, a business unit that wanted to be agile, right? What I would do is I would strip out, because that tool I showed you, you can pull stuff out of it, right? It's basically, that tool I showed you is basically set up with a lot of radio buttons, right? So you just click the radio buttons, turn them off, and all those branches go away. So I would just, and we've done this, and there's like 7 goals and about 67 practices when you just pull it right out.
Yeah, a lot, many, yeah.
So that's there. So to give you a sense, there's 100, there's 23 goals, and there are 143 decision points. So I'm talking about taking off, maybe keeping 20% of it and using 20% of it for outside of IT. Now, I agree, there's probably lots of practices we're missing because we don't understand the domain of, let's say, marketing, maybe, or product development or whatever it is. But and that's actually okay, because as an agile coach or an agile leader, and that's why I keep coming back to agile principles. Just stick with those 4 agile principles. I would convert them over to be business principles based instead of software. I'd start with that. I'd use the customized version of the browser to pare it down, and that's what I would take to the business. And I think you've got 80% of what you need, right?
Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much, John. There are a couple of questions which I would like to take you. One is from Ashutosh. He is asking, if I understand it correctly, like PMO, which is there very prevalent in the traditional way. Can Agile replace the PMO function? Can the PMO use Agile? Let me ask you this as a service.
Yeah. So I think it kind of depends, right? I think it depends on what you're building, and I think it. So let's stay inside the software domain for a second. If that's the area, the business area, then I think they can use Agile as a way to to find improvement, right? Because Agile is not a methodology, right? Like it was never designed for that. Agile is purely a learning framework. That's it. It's just a way to learn faster, right? Learn what the customers want, etc. So the way we're seeing it, right, and we obviously deal with a lot of PMOs. So the way we're seeing it is PMOs are transit, and this is, I don't want to overstate this, but they're starting to transition into an agile way, and it's really coming down to sliding over to a more of a value stream based approach, which is a lean approach for the PMO and more of a agile approach at the team level to find better ways of working. So can it work in a PMO? Yes, we're seeing that. I personally, I see it being a value stream based, model in the PMO, but I think we're still seeing that happen. So we're still in the process of watching that happen. So.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Thanks, John. Let me move to the next question by Kruti Bas. He says that he's from the finance background. He's asking your advice how I can take disciplined agile to my practice.
Here's what I would do. I mean, there's a couple ways of doing it, but I would really understand what DA is all about. So if you're brand new to it, I would jump into the course, right? The SM. First of all, actually, here's what I would do. If I wanted to sell it to the business, what I would do is and I'm happy to help you with this, by the way, because I do this all the time. I would show them the browser and how you make decisions on going to Agile. So get them in the mindset of Agile, right? Then what I would do is I would take, probably depends on your skill set. If you have, SM, but for sure SSM. And then what I would do is I would use the browser to help you make those decisions, right? And just read it that way, right? How do I plan what are my considerations to plan a release? And just go through it. It will take some time and maybe, get some help from a coach or something like that. But that's how I would do it. I would get some basic understanding of how to use this browser. I would get some basic understanding of what the Agile principles are. And then I would start working through it and look at all those different decision points. And it will take a long time on your own for sure. But if you got a little bit, get some coaching help here, it wouldn't need much. It really wouldn't need half a day, maybe a day, to start understanding how you could, which decision points are important to be able to take it. So we have lots of, for example, in the finance space, we have lots of, Franklin Templeton uses this, right? Barclays Bank uses this, Bank of Columbia uses, so Desjardins, we have lots of financial organizations, banking, and insurance use it. So we have lots that are doing it. So, but typically they have someone who's the leader, and they have the leader who wants to keep things better for his teams, so he gets higher throughput. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So what you're saying in summary is to build awareness about what is agile, what is agility, and then actually take the next steps. People to be on the same page to do that. Yeah.
And you can use DA to help you do that, right? So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I think we are at almost 9 o'clock. I think there is one more. Okay. No. So there is. Okay. You said thanks. Yeah, so we will get a recording projector on this. Okay, so I'd like to give special thanks to John for taking his time out. I know how valuable his time is. It's very difficult to catch John or email. He spent 1 hour with us. So I am really thankful for the insights, for the trends. He actually made it pretty simple to make how disciplined agile is outcome based, how it differs from other practices, how it is an umbrella, how it leverages other practices. I think that you simplified. I have attended a lot of sessions on disciplined agile, but the way you have simplified, I think many would have registered what is disciplined agile and how it stands out. So thank you once again, John, and have a wonderful day. And I hope to see you soon again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yep.
Thank you, all of you. Thanks, and a warm namaste from India to all of you. Thank you. Bye. See ya.